Right now, Philly's in the middle of a national controversy. The Trump administration has been fighting with the city for months over the signage at the President's House at 6th and Market. The exhibit From Enslavement to Emancipation is one of the few sites in Old City that actually addresses slavery, and yesterday a federal appeals court ruled that the Trump administration has the authority to alter the site as they see fit. This issue seems emblematic of a huge problem that's facing the modern American psyche. How do we come to terms with the myths and ideals of America while addressing the reality of our history? Allow me a gross metaphor for a second, but when I was a kid, one of my favorite wrestlers was Hulk Hogan. His character really spoke to me. It was about, say your prayers, eat your vitamins, take care of your friends, that sort of thing. And to me, that was sort of the idea of America for a young kid. I was like, we're the good guys. But the more you look into Hulk Hogan and the more you learn who he is as a person, I'm talking about Terry Bollea now, the man who portrayed Hulk Hogan, they're very different. Terry was always lying about stuff. He was accused of being a union buster. There's the whole Gawker thing, which I don't have to go into, but needless to say, they were very, very different. So obviously, the man and the myth of the man were completely different. And I think that a lot of Americans struggle in this same way with the Founding Fathers. People want to celebrate the ideals of the American Revolution. They want to celebrate justice, freedom, equality, all of these wonderful ideas. But in order to actually live up to those ideas, we're going to have to come to terms with our collective history. Can we celebrate Washington? I think we can. I just think it's a little complicated. For instance, I think one of the best things Washington ever did was step down after 2 terms as president. He ensured a peaceful transition of power, which is something that I would argue the Trump administration does not believe in. But to celebrate Washington without acknowledging slavery is to ignore the entire institution that led him to his prominence. Which brings me back to the President's House. The country, whether you like it or not, is built on slavery, and it's the main reason why America becomes a global economic powerhouse. And there's this idea going around that, okay, these were men of their time, slavery was socially acceptable, but that's really not true. The Quakers here in Philadelphia, or rather Germantown at the time, were protesting slavery as early as the 1680s. Even Thomas Jefferson, another prolific slaveholder in the country, wrote a huge anti-slavery screed in one of the first drafts of the Declaration of Independence. In 1780, the Revolutionary War is still ongoing, and the Pennsylvania General Assembly is passing the Gradual Abolition Act of 1780, which ensured that anyone born into slavery after the act's passage would have a way to freedom. You were a non-resident, so Washington, and you had your enslaved people in Pennsylvania for more than 6 months, they were legally allowed to gain their freedom. Washington knew this and decided to bypass the act by cycling people out before they hit the 6-month mark. He knew what he was doing. He was protecting his capital. So how do we grapple with this? I think the answer is really easy. It's that we have to have a place to tell these stories. I saw a few ugly comments online saying that the President's House should be reserved for history specifically about Washington, but there's no shortage of options for that in Old City. You go to Christ Church, you can see the pew that Washington sat in while he was a president. You go to Independence Hall, you can talk about the Declaration of Independence and all of the founders. If you go to the Museum of the American Revolution, they have Washington's original war tent on display, and it is honestly pretty fantastic. Enslavement to Emancipation was the only spot in Old City that really spoke about slavery in a pretty direct way. And now it's in the hands of a pretty antagonistic administration. And even if the administration ends up taking down all of the signage, the stories aren't going anywhere. I want to recommend to you a book called Never Caught: The Washington's Relentless Pursuit of Their Runaway Slave, Ona Judge, by Armstrong Dunbar. The book follows Ona Judge, who was a young woman who was enslaved to Martha Washington, as she plans her escape from Philadelphia and her journey to freedom. The book is really approachable. I know people can get a little bit intimidated by history books, but it flies by, and Ona's story is amazing. The tension in this book is palpable, and I'm surprised that it's not a movie already. It should be. One of my favorite things about Never Caught is that Ona manages to stay free for the rest of her life, and in 1845, she gives a few interviews for local newspapers. She talks about Washington's character, and it's really interesting to hear in her own words what this experience was like. Another recommendation, although not directly related to Philadelphia, is this new Independent Lens documentary put out by PBS called Exposing the Myth of Southern Charm. It follows interpreters in Natchez, Mississippi, as they tackle, or in some cases don't tackle, the issue of slavery. It's free on YouTube. It is phenomenal. And if you enjoyed this video and you want to learn more about Philadelphia, come take a tour with me, Seamus. I got a new company. It's called Seamus Walks. We're doing tours every weekend throughout the summer. I'll see you there.